All right, greetings everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Plan B Success. Who we have today is Mark Metry, and he's got a couple of different things that he's doing. He's the founder and CEO of VUDream, where he's dabbling with technology and the intersection with human emotions and other things, and how can we make better humans using technology. And then the Human podcast is another thing that he runs where he's been very successful. It's in the top 100 podcasts. I think he does about one episode a week. He brings in the best of minds in terms of technologists, inventors, scientists, anybody who has something to share in terms of making a difference to us as humans. With that said, Mark, welcome. It's great to have you. I'm so excited to have you as a guest today.
Rajiv, thank you so much for having me on, man. I'm super excited to talk to you and your audience and hopefully deliver some value.
Awesome. So, Mark, in your own words, why don't you introduce yourself and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, man. So, I'm a really chill guy. I'm a 22-year-old growing up on the East Coast, the United States. I was born in America. My parents immigrated here from Egypt. I sort of had a, rough beginning of my life, but, now, today, I mean, it's so crazy to even think about. And, honestly, every single day, I, really just thank God. I'm super grateful for the position that I'm in. And, how, literally what is it? It's August 30th, 2019. How literally in the beginning of 2016, at the end of 2015, I was super depressed, super socially anxious, mostly throughout my entire life, not so much the depression. And, to sort of see myself come this far it's literally beyond crazy. And it just puts me in that mindset of, I'm successful now, sure. Now, how can I help others that were once like me do the same thing? And I think that's what makes the world go round. So that's what I try to do every day.
Great. Wonderful stuff. So, there's a lot of similarities between us. I'm an immigrant too. I'm a first-generation immigrant, by the way. When I look at your story, there's a lot of parallels that I draw, especially, with your parents, your father coming in with $200 in his pocket. I came in with about $100 in my pocket to do an MBA. And it's great. Your generation, you were born here. You've got the best of both worlds, so to speak. Some of the things that you've imbibed from your parents. What do you think you've learned from your parents that has helped you on your journey?
Man, what an amazing question. I wish more people asked me this. So there's a lot, right? I think for my dad is, we talk a lot about entrepreneurship, I'm going to start this business and stuff. But I think I definitely got that from my dad because, I saw him and my mom get out there and work every single day super hard and make sacrifices for, the sake of their family, for the sake of their future. And so I definitely think that I have my entrepreneurial, business mindset from my dad. And then also, I remember when I was a kid, I remember whenever my dad and I were in the car alone, for example, he would always just tell me just life lessons. it was as if he was just reading off a book. He would just say Mark, make sure you don't lie because, when you're able to not lie and be yourself in front of other people, you're not going to be scared. He just told me a ton of different things. I could go down a list. And then I think from my mom's side is she taught me probably the most important thing I'd say is, she had this saying of start a new page. And what she's talking about is she's just making some kind of a metaphor, basically saying that, life is like one big book. And because you don't like this current page that you are on, you have the power to flip the page. You have the power to say, I'm going to start a new page. And so obviously when I was a kid, I didn't really understand this. But growing up, what I got from that is basically the importance of, valuing your future over the present moment, over the past. And I think that's a superpower. And I think if you can live life like that and you can imagine the future and work towards it and not be as dedicated as you are to the past, or, if you're in the present moment, if you're in right now and right now sucks, it's that sight. It's that future sight of saying, okay, right now sucks, but I'm going to take one step forward towards the future and create a new thing. And so, I mean, there's so many, but those are the ones that really, really stick out and really, really help me throughout and continue to help me throughout my life. But I'm glad you asked that, man. Very powerful question.
Awesome. So let me ask you a little bit more. So, I know that your dad had a great engineering career, wasn't it, back in Egypt before he came over to the US?
Yeah.
And then he ended up setting up a pizza shop in order to support the family. So have you ever talked to him about it? Kind of going from that to this, and what was his reaction to it?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had a super deep conversation with him about it, but basically, he was an engineer in Egypt, and when he came here to America, he basically figured out that if he wants to be doing the same thing that he was doing in Egypt, he's going to have to go all the way back to school, go to college, get different kinds of degrees, and that wasn't an option for him because he had his wife, my mom, and sister, and a newborn baby on the way. And so it was just about making money right now and making sacrifices over trying to go to college even though you have kids to raise and you don't have any money. So that's what I understand about it.
Right, absolutely. So your own story, when you were in high school and how you stumbled into games, video games, and that's where you stumbled into actually being an entrepreneur as well, which was all by chance. But before we even get there, two things that struck me was one was your own health challenges that you were going through, and then the other was you fighting your own monsters internally. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think they definitely go hand in hand, but growing up, I had my own fair share of health challenges, and to be honest with you, I don't really know what the exact source is, other than the fact my parents had told me when I was just born, there were some different kinds of complications, and I almost ended up dying like 5 seconds into this world. So I definitely think that has a part of it. And, a lot of my health issues were autoimmune based. So things that I see a lot of kids today in America have, like asthma, different kinds of allergies, rashes, issues with the gut, issues with the stomach, with the digestive system, things like ADHD, ADD, not being able to sleep, having low energy or too much energy. And so as a kid, I had my fair share of those kinds of struggles. And honestly, I didn't think too much about it at the time, but the best way I can describe it is, again, like most people, I was, sent to a doctor. They said, hey, Mark, you have this thing. We are either, going to give you some kind of treatment, some kind of medication for it, and you are just like born with this thing. This thing is black and white. You can't really change it. Just take this medicine and just accept it. And so that's basically what I did. I wasn't really conscious of my health because I thought it was something that I didn't even have control over. And so that was one part of it. And, really what that made me do is since I was on all these different kinds of medications, I didn't have any energy. So when it came to school, I was basically like that kid in the back of the classroom that either just didn't say a word or would put his head down and sleep, or would just be busy like drawing or something else. And the times where I did try to focus, I literally couldn't focus. My brain wouldn't let me, and I would just go into something else. And honestly, that's been a common theme maybe until I was 18, 19. And so, when you are a kid like that, you really feel like you're sort of in your own bubble. And what I began to see is I began all these different, maybe like you said, like these negative sort of like these demons, approaching. And what I mean is, and again, when this was happening, I had no idea this was going on. I was unconscious of it. Honestly, thank God. But, I don't think I've ever been in a moment of stillness, of bliss when I was a kid. To me, I always sort of had like an existential sense of anxiety. Like I could never sit still. I could never just stand somewhere and if you left me 10 minutes, I would try to find a way to like distract myself because I knew I didn't really, have basically for lack of a better word, a well screwed on mind. And so, the different things that I began to see, like that's where I really developed social anxiety. I would walk into a classroom or anywhere and my brain would tell me, Mark, you look different. You don't look like any of these people. That guy over there is probably insulting you. That girl over there is probably making fun of your pants. This person is probably, basically all like these basically like these mental delusions. I have no idea if they were happening or not, but that's what I think social anxiety is, and I think a lot of people have it. And so that was part of it. Another part of it was, I remember trying to fall asleep as a kid, and some nights I literally would not fall asleep because of my anxiety, and my thoughts would just go and go and go. And, even sometimes when I did fall asleep, I would have terrible nightmares, and I would even like wet the bed very frequently because, what I found out now is, when you're walking throughout life, you can, there could be so many distractions. You could look down on your phone, and, there are good and bad distractions, right? Like you could read a book, you could go for a walk, you could go to the gym. Or, you could watch TV, you could do whatever. And so, when you're going to sleep at night, there aren't really any more of those distractions. It's just you and your mind. And so when I was faced with my own mind, that's where, just straight up panic, fight or flight response. I'd wet the bed, wake up in the morning, go to school, do the same thing over again. And so that was basically my life for like little under like a decade. And, honestly, obviously, like, other people have had it worse, and this is not some story on how I'm like, people should feel bad for me or whatever. But I honestly feel like this was sort of created, this chapter in my life, and it really gave me the tools that forced me to grow and build to get to this level that I'm on now. And so I'm very grateful for it. But I mean, it's the difference is day and night. Like I don't wish that on anybody. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty crazy.
Sure, yeah, it is. And I think that's what probably prompted you to kind of find solace in things that you could do by yourself, which is where it takes you to video games. And then dabbling in video games and having this technical bent of mind, you decided to, work on one of those external servers, which is where it picked up. The number of members went up, and then you started seeing money as well. So it seems like things were going pretty well there with, I believe, about 10 million members subscribed to your server and about a 40-member team that you were running. So what
40-member team?
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to ask you, so what prompted you to run it for a while and then get out of it?
Man, that's a good question. I don't think anybody's ever asked me that. So to take things back for people, like you said, growing up, played a lot of video games. That's where I really found my peace. That was my drug of choice at that time. And probably food, too. But I had been playing these video games, and I eventually stumbled on this game called Minecraft. That's where I build this thing called a multiplayer server. And, I make it, nothing too crazy. And to make a long story short, like quoting numbers, it becomes the world's #1 Minecraft server in a pretty short period of time. And, I went from somebody who really didn't have any kind of money. Like I remember sometimes my parents would give me like $5 for allowance, but sometimes they didn't, to all of a sudden making hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so, I mean, that's a whole other story in and of itself. I could talk about that if you want. When I was like 15, I was making that level of money and what that did to my mind. But in terms of me not running anymore, the server shut down last year in 2018. So 2016, when sort of the beginning of my transformation is happening, I really just stopped stopped really administrating it. I had started a new business at that time, and I had passed the reins off to, I gave it to somebody else. I gave it to the head staff of team that was in charge. I was like, hey, I've got other things to do in my life. Do you want to take care of this and keep it as your own? I'm not really interested anymore. And he was like, yeah, sure. So I don't really own it anymore. And the decision for that was just new frontier. Like I was just, not that I was sick of it. I enjoyed doing it for sure, but it's just like, I don't want to be playing video games any longer. And so that was really the need for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So that's, it's a curious question. You're a 22-year-old now. And when you look at the world around, you pick up any newspaper, you go on any website, it's always about, hey, startups, they raise this much capital, these guys raise that much capital, this is what's going on, IPO, this, that. It's all up. Success somehow is being measured in dollar figures all around.
Right.
And when I look at you and look at your story, at your age, I would think that would have a higher impact, but you decided to just give it up and walk away. So that's the piece that I'm trying to get to, as to what prompted that.
Yeah, so I'll tell you what happened, man. So I had started the server when I was 15 years old, and basically by the time I was like 16, maybe 7, 8, 9 months, that's where things really pick up. It becomes the world's #1 Minecraft server, and I start making a ton of money. And it sounds like a fantasy, right? Like a 16-year-old who now has hundreds of thousands of dollars doing something that he loves, right? Like, this is a video game. This is not something that is like slaving me away or anything like that. But this is the thing that actually happened, Rajiv. So now, looking at myself now, throughout my entire life, I had this unconscious narrative of my head of what I was supposed to do in my life, which is basically along the lines of go to school, get a degree, get a job, work your way up at that company, eventually make like a 6-figure salary, buy a house, get married, get a dog, have kids, live a happy life, all of your problems go away, right? The American dream.
Right.
And that is the unconscious framework that my brain was running on. And so all of a sudden, when I made all this money from, again, at 15, 16 years old, didn't go to college, didn't even try that hard to like make a startup and try to find investors or make a business plan or any of that stuff. When I had made it then, I was just like wait, like what's going on here? And instead of sort of building my confidence or making me feel successful, it was actually the reverse. And I felt even more like a loser. I even felt more anxious. And that was actually like, when I look at it, that was like the beginning of like this sort of depression that began to, onset on me. And the reason for that is at that time when I was young, sure, I had all these problems, but, I think my mind was trying to figure out to get on the right path. And I chased this path of success unknowingly, unconsciously, and I got that, society's definition at least, and I was like, there's no way this is it. Like, there's literally no way this is it. I was making more money than my parents by far, mostly every single person around me, and it alienated me even more. It put me even more into a bubble. And it was such a crazy, crazy time because, the one thing almost that I didn't have, I now have. But then I realized that that's not the king of all of my problems. Like, the actual problem is something that lies deeper. Success is not just about the money. It's about something deeper. And so when that started, ages 16, 17, 18, I think that's what slowly began to put me on this path, on this adventure. And it was really just like an uncovering of, just like a renewal almost of two different worlds, of me going from like Mark version 1.0, of just sort of taking whatever life gives him, not understanding, not being conscious, always thinking that the problem is on the outside, it's that person, it's this thing, it's this event, and then sort of departed from that and realizing, oh wait, success is actually way more than how many numbers are in your bank account, or how many people you can impress, or, whatever. Success is about being healthy. It's about being happy. It's about changing other people's lives. It's about going to sleep at the end of the day with a clear conscience and knowing that you did everything you did. And so yeah, man, it was a crazy time, but that's what I felt like really began to slowly get me on the real path of success, and not so much about money, because I got it super easy early on.
It's amazing you say that, because there's a lot of people that are going through that struggle now, especially with the way conventional careers are changing, right? There's a lot of YouTubers out there, or people on all this social media with a lot of followers and monetizing it, and they're all youngsters. And they're all seeing a lot of money coming their way, and they don't know how to take it. So this is pretty impactful in terms of trying to really decipher what success means to you, that it's more than money, it's chasing happiness, but it's actually being content in what you have. That's great. So now,
Yeah.
after your transformation, you started off with your podcast, and you also started off with your new company, VUDream. So can you talk a little bit about those two?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So my company VUDream, it was really born out of my out of like this whole transformation of mine. And the reason is, and I mentioned this a little bit before with my mom, but I realized I was never future action oriented. I definitely think I've been future oriented, hence some of the anxiety that I've faced and continue to face in my life. But I was never excited about the future. And what I mean by that is it felt like the future was this thing that was going to come almost like a death sentence. But it was never the future as if like, hey, I'm going to create these goals and I'm going to create something for myself that's better than today. And so when I was starting on my transformation, I realized a big thing that I was missing was this lack of a compelling future for myself. And what I realized is if you don't have a compelling future for yourself, you don't have hope that tomorrow is going to be better than today. And when you don't have that hope, you no longer start living for today. And you start doing things that you would normally never do. I think this is the basis of all crimes, terrorism, people not having hope for tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was in the middle of that and I was looking out into the future of my own personal future and not really knowing what's going to be there, but then I started looking at the future of this world and of technology. And I was like, man, throughout my entire life, I've always been interested in technology. Always. That's always been a common theme. And so I began to look out in the future and I'm like, wow, there are so many different things that are going on with exponential technologies. And, I had that feeling because, for example, I remember in 2012, my country, Egypt, and a lot of other countries in the Middle East, they had this thing called the Arab Spring, which was basically a series of countries in the Middle East revolted against their government, their dictators, their presidents, whatever. And I remember, my cousin telling me that the entire revolution in Egypt started because of Facebook. And he was telling me that when they were walking in the streets, when the government had shut down certain streets, some certain streets were being invaded by terrorist groups and some crazy things that were going on. He was telling me amidst that chaos, people were spray painting on the walls this blue box with a white F in the middle, meaning Facebook, meaning get on Facebook, get on communication, get on the revolution. And so obviously this didn't click in back in 2012, but I was like, holy crap, this technology thing is actually going to change all of our lives in a way that we've never really thought of it before. And I had known this not only because of that whole Egypt revolution, but also because of, the Minecraft server and what I had done. And I was like, wait, so you're telling me a 15-year-old can, buy a laptop and click buttons, and all of a sudden he's able to take him and his entire family out of poverty? That's something mind-blowing. Yeah. As much as we want to, make it how common it is, and that's pretty mind-blowing. And so as, and even then, I remember even before the Minecraft server, when I was on the internet, in 2009, I remember there was no respect for the internet. There was no kind of legitimacy towards it at all. And as I was growing up, I literally saw this happen in front of my eyes. So I was like, this technology thing, I don't know, I don't even know what it is. It has so many different forms, but it is going to be the future. And as I began to look at the future of our society, of technology, I began to stumble across so many different really interesting industries, from virtual reality to artificial intelligence to blockchain to the Internet of Things to 5G to literally so many. And people can just Google all this stuff because we don't have time to go into all of them. But I was basically like, this world is going to rapidly change in the grand scheme of things over the next few decades. I want to be a part of that. And so, I chose exponential technology. We chose mixed reality. And we were basically like, what can we do to help get this technology in the mainstream? And before I say that, let me back up here. We were trying to find the exponential technology that, is has some time before it goes mainstream so we could get into it, but then also is not super developed so that the market isn't already crowded, and that has a massive potential impactful change on people's lives. And so when we were looking at mixed reality and virtual reality, I mean, I don't even think there's anything that's going to come close aside from, AI. And a lot of these technologies are working together. It's not one or the other.
Right.
But I think, the concept of you putting on something on your head and you stepping into a different reality is just mind-blowing. And you take that a step further, and let's say, you put on a pair of glasses like I'm wearing right now. I'm not wearing augmented reality glasses, but I could. No, I'm just kidding. You're talking about now we're overlaying digital things into the real world. And the implications of that are the internet is no longer going to be a separate thing from real life. They're going to merge into one, and in the future, there's not going to be a difference. And so I think when we're talking about that level of change, I think it's going to completely upgrade the human species. It's going to completely change us. We're no longer going to be just like these human beings that have eyes we can just see and look down on our phones. It's going to completely change the game. And so we were looking at that and we're like, okay, mixed reality, virtual reality is going to completely change the world. People, different industries are using it to literally help people's lives today and in the future. And today, for example, like Walmart is using virtual reality for training their employees. They have like a VR station at the back of basically all their stores. There's different hospitals, especially here in Boston, Massachusetts, that are using virtual reality all the way as a painkiller to people that have PTSD to kids that have autism. And so it has such a wide range of applications that is going to provide solutions to this world that just simply don't exist right now. And so we want to be a part of that. And so we were looking at this and we're like, what is the best possible way that we could be helpful towards this industry? And I was taking a look at my skills and I'm like, wow, I'm a really good marketer. I've been on the internet. I've been marketing for the last 10 years. And so we help VR mixed reality companies explain their product before it becomes into actual reality, because we're talking about technology here that may seem completely foreign to other people. Maybe kids not so much because they get used to things much quicker, but really just forming their own path in industry. So that's the company that I started it, and it, it's really more or less about my personal and professional transformation, because I had started this company. And it was really a beginning of like a campaign, of like a conquest for myself. It was a way for me to step into something that I really love doing, and then also having something to push me forward, right? It's like, I remember when I was in the beginning of this transformation, I started doing all these new habits. And it was like, wake up at 6 a.m., meditate, journal, go to the gym, exercise. And a big part of that was just like starting my own business to say like, hey, I need something to push me forward because, I have clients that rely on me. I have a staff that relies on me. And it was really just a way to sort of, sort me out and put me in a bigger system that sort of acts as a feedback loop. And so, yeah, that was massive. And I could go into the podcast if you want me to.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah,
I said a lot.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, so the podcast, I started it in the middle of 2017, and it, on the same train of thought, it was very much an extensuation of that. It was this time where I had, really started like this new version of my life. I had started doing all these new things, and for anybody else who's listening, who's also on this journey, how rewarding and fulfilling, but also how challenging and difficult choosing to live this kind of life is. And so I was running into all sorts of problems and challenges. And I was like, I need to talk to people. I need to learn from people that actually know what they're doing. I need to learn from people that are actually, practitioners and are out there in this world doing the thing they are doing every single day. And they're not just reading about it. They're not just writing articles about it on the internet. They're actually doing it. And so the podcast for me was really for me to create my own tool to get, primary resources to get access to the people in the world who know the best, who I could learn from. Because, if I've learned anything in my life, it's that the best way to learn anything is to just have a conversation with somebody that is directly in that industry, that is directly doing that thing that you want to be doing. And so the podcast for me was just a tool that I could do that at a mass scale. And it's completely changed my life. It's become like a whole movement. I don't even know what to think about it anymore. And it's totally crazy, man.
Awesome. So when you look back at your life, right? So we've talked about your entire life journey to date. What would you consider the lowest point as well as the highest point in your life to date?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting question. So this is what I'll say. So the lowest point for me was, I think it was November, December of 2015. And it was at a time where the emotional pain that, was going on in my life, untreated or, treated in my own way, right? Because throughout life, we all have our own coping mechanisms to deal with things. At that time, I didn't have any coping mechanisms. My coping mechanisms were, if life sucks, eat a ton of food, binge watch Netflix, hang out with your friends or just people that aren't going to be productive or take you where you want to go, any kind of drugs or alcohol. And so those were all my coping mechanisms. And by the time I was 18, it got to a point where it was so bad, I didn't know what to do anymore. Like I literally could not fall asleep anymore. All of my coping mechanisms, they weren't working anymore. And so what I began to do instead is I began to go for walks outside in the middle of the night when I couldn't go to sleep. And so I literally remember it was like a span of like these 2 weeks where I would just go outside and I would just walk every single day at like 2 a.m. in Boston, Massachusetts, where I live. And, Boston is a very beautiful city. It has a lot of great areas, but just like any place, just like any city, it also has its bad places. It has its bad neighborhoods. It has the ghetto, right? Mm-hmm. And so the place where I lived, it was maybe about like 2-3 miles away from the ghetto. And so what I would do is I would literally walk there on purpose because in the background of my mind, I didn't know what was going on. I was in so much pain that I just wanted it to end. And so I was literally like fantasizing in the back of my mind, man, I hope somebody comes up to me, kills me, whatever, mugs me, so I don't have to deal with this anymore. So that's what that was going on in the back of my mind. I wasn't conscious of it. And so I was trying to do that. And I wasn't, I never really got any kind of self-suicidal thoughts like, hey, I'm going to go kill myself, but it was heading very, very much towards there. And so at that time, I was suicidal, and I was trying to get my life to end. And that was probably, on one of those nights, that was probably the lowest point. But within that same contradiction, it was also, now that I look back at it, that was actually my highest point. Because what I realized, Rajiv, is that this desire that I had in the back of my mind to kill myself, to commit suicide, I realized that was actually a good thing. And what I mean by that is this desire that I had, it wasn't telling me, hey, Mark, go jump off a bridge, go, hang yourself, go buy a gun, whatever. It was saying, you need to kill this. And it's like, wait, what are you saying? And what it's talking about is you need to kill your previous identity. You need to kill who you thought you were. And that's actually where all the pain was coming from. It wasn't the fact that, I had all these issues in my life. It was the fact that I had created this identity for myself. This is Mark Metry. This is how he looks. This is how he talks. This is how he behaves in front of other people. This is what I do in this case. And I realized that my pain was me trying to still cling on to that identity. One in time, it's a new season of life. With new information, new perspectives, new data coming in, it's time for you to renew your identity. And so when I figured that out in one of those nights when I was on that walk in absolute silence, that's where I really felt like I got in touch with myself and God or the universe, whatever you believe in, for the first time. And so in a contradictory way, that was also the lowest point and the highest point. But I'll tell you a high point. Mm-hmm. So I'll tell you 2 high points if that's possible, sort of.
Sure.
So before we hopped on this call, you were telling me that you read that Forbes article that featured me and my life story.
Right.
And that was crazy. That happened last year, at the end of last year. And, we did a very in-depth interview. It was literally a 2-hour video interview on Forbes. And so we were talking about all of this stuff, but way more in depth and other things that I didn't even figure out at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I walked out of that building in New York City, I was just like, what the hell just happened? Like, I just went from this kid who I could literally remember yesterday was just in the classroom, was miserable, didn't have any friends. And then now, people are, trying to, like, just some crazy, I don't even know how to explain it. That to me was massive. And it wasn't, me like saying, oh my God, I got on Forbes. That's not the high point that I'm talking about. It's the sheer moment of where when I stepped outside of this building, it was almost just like, I just saw like my entire life flash before my eyes. And at that time, I was just like this is the second level. Like this is a completely new level. And then the other part of that is, if I can, I went out to breakfast with my entire family. I mean, it's not a big family, just me, my mom, my sister, a few months ago. And we went out to breakfast, and I ordered a steak and eggs for breakfast. It was a pretty fancy breakfast place. And we were literally all sitting there. We were all having a great time. And I literally like just looked at everybody. I was like, guys, we made it. We literally came from the most dangerous town in Massachusetts. We came from the projects, living off food stamps, living off, government assisted housing. We lived off all this stuff. And now we not only have a ton of money, but also more importantly, we're truly happy. We're focused on the right things. We're trying to do the best towards people. And we're eating steak and eggs for breakfast. That literally right there is a hallmark sign of some degree of success. And so it was just something silly, but I think it's crazy, man. Thank you for asking that question. You put a smile on my face, man.
Thanks for sharing that. I got a few questions for you, Mark. Just tell me what comes to mind as I ask these questions. What do you think you're most thankful for so far in your life?
I think I'm the most thankful for taking action on a split decision in the back of my mind. And what I mean by that is this. Literally yesterday, I was thinking about, man, what if I didn't go walking outside? Man, what if when I got that little voice in the back of my mind that told me to go do this thing, what if I didn't do that? And so I'm literally so grateful for in those moments when young Mark, out of desperation or out of, whatever it was, I'm so grateful I chose those moments because they ultimately got me on this path. And I know there's so many people out there, man, that are my age and are really, really struggling with this. And I have my own struggles. I have my own problems for sure right now, like we all do. But I cannot imagine me sort of living in the mode that I was living in my life. So I'm the most grateful for those super tiny micro decisions.
Awesome. And what are you most scared of?
Oh, man. So I'm doing a lot of different things. I not only have this business, I have this podcast. I not only have this podcast, I'm also like speaking around the world to different people. And not only that, I'm also, engaged in a lot of different projects. But I'm also engaged in a lot of projects. Like I'm in the middle of writing a book. I'm in the middle of creating music to kind of take all the stuff that I've been learning through my podcast about mindset, about psychology, about health, about self-development. And now I'm trying to bring that into the mainstream culture with hip-hop music. And so that's one thing. And so aside from everything being so new and me stepping into a new frontier, because that's always a little bit scary. I don't know what to expect. I don't know what's going to happen. But I think maybe a fear that I have is that it's not going to work. That people are going to look at it and it's just going to be like, oh, this is just some random kid trying to make some money online, even though that is not what I'm trying to do. And I'm really, really trying to change this world in the way that I was the most affected by through mental health. And so that's a fear. I think another fear that I have is, I know this is impossible, but I think another fear that I have is being average. I think because I grew up a decade even longer, being average, I now have like this obsessive compulsive. I know how bad that is, and I don't want to be average. And then, I'm sure I'd have some other kinds of fears, like, I don't know, what happens if I, die tomorrow? And, death is a really interesting subject. But I think it's more in the sense of like, what if I die and I don't get to accomplish all the things that I get to work on? But at the same time, I have a notification that goes off on my phone every single day that says, hey, Mark, you're going to die one day. Just to get me to understand that literally today could be the last shot that I have. So I think those are definitely some fears. And honestly, to be quite honest, I've largely defeated my social anxiety for like 99% of it. But, I still get anxious in some moments. And I think that is just like, it's something I'm always working on. But I think that's just like the natural just nature of who I am, my character. It's something that I'm always working on and we'll see because I am a very young guy and as this journey unfolds. But yeah, man, there's a lot. We could go into a lot more if you want to. I have a lot of fears, but I love the question.
But here's what I'm going to tell you. Fears are natural. They're normal. It's okay to have fears, but don't let any of them stop you from doing what you're doing.
Absolutely. And can I add something else? A friend of mine, Maston Kipp, he's like the top authority right now on like psychological trauma. Mm-hmm. And he's been on like Oprah. He's done crazy things. And he has this quote, and it says this: unless you are in mortal danger, as in there is a tiger or a guy that's about to shoot you, fear is a compass showing you where to go. And it's so funny because, throughout my life, like I had mentioned, I had really severe social anxiety. I could never talk to people. I could never make direct eye contact. Whenever there was some kind of presentation at school, I would either spend the entire time in the bathroom because my digestive system was just like super, super nervous. And I would just go up there and just like look at the floor and read something, or I just wouldn't show up that day. To then now, I'm literally, like I said, traveling the entire world, talking to people. It's so funny how, things work out. So honestly, it's like, there's another quote that I've said. I don't know where it is, but the very thing that you are afraid to tell people about, the very thing that you think when your friends or your family or other people you don't know find out about you, that you're super embarrassed of or you're super anxious or nervous of, that is the very thing that you need to bring into this world during your lifetime. And so that's really what I realized for me. And yeah, so I think fear is a compass. Just move towards it, as long as it's not a line.
Yeah, and if you have fear, all that it means is you have the capacity to grow.
Ooh, I like that, man. I love that. There you go. Rajiv dropping bombs.
All right. So what are you most happy about?
What am I most happy about? Honestly, I think on a daily basis, I get happy about like really little things. It's like every time I cook food or I eat food, I get pretty happy. Every time I hang out or see my family, I get pretty happy. Anytime where I'm just, living my life, like whether I'm at the gym or I'm having a meeting. Obviously not happy all the time because that's impossible, but I try to make the most of it. And I try to always find optimism in everything. And I try to just try my best. And, it's gotten to that point where it's just a reflex now. So now my mind is at this point where something bad will happen. Mm-hmm. My mind will sort of understand it like the first minute. And then I'll instantly be like, okay, how is this a good thing? How is this actually going to lead me to my journey? Or if something is really, really bad that's happening, it's just like understanding in my mind, hey, Mark, in life, you have to have down moments in order to have up moments. This may be happening because, maybe it's a challenge for you to try to find happiness in a specific moment, or maybe it's just for your life future sake because you've got to go down to go up. And so I don't even think I answered your question, but I try to be happy in everything. But
sure, that's
sometimes
great.
It doesn't always work out.
So now that you've come so far in your life and you're only 22, what do you look forward to?
Yeah, man. So I'm really looking forward to speaking. So like, I should show you my calendar, but I'm going to so many different places over like the next few months. I'm going on like a mini world tour, like the 5 biggest cities in America, places in Europe, places in Asia. I'm really looking forward to that. And honestly, man, the other thing I'm really looking forward to is the music, like I had said. Mm-hmm. Like I really feel like that is going to be it for me because like I said, like I'm so hell-bent on changing this world, but I've also been in like this whole, what do you call it? Like self-help motivational industry, just from like all the people that I've talked to on the podcast. I know that the people in this world that need the most help are probably not listening to podcasts like you or mine.
Right.
Right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're probably like listening to some other thing on the radio or something. And so I want to get in front of those people, and I want to use music. I want to use rap. I want to use hip hop as a vehicle to take all this knowledge that I've been getting from the world's most successful people, bring it down into everyday common terms, and get that out into the mainstream. And have you ever read that book, Think and Grow Rich?
Yep. Napoleon Hill, yeah.
So in that book, yeah, it's amazing. In that book, there's a list of the most stimulating things to the human mind. Mm-hmm. These are the things that can enter the easiest. So like the first one on the list is the desire for sexual expression. Makes sense. Number 2 is love. Number 3 is a burning desire for money, power, or fame. Number 4 is music. Mm-hmm. Number 5 is auto-suggestion, which is basically just like repeating things to yourself. And so when I read that, I was just like, whoa, what? And then once you get to think about it, it actually makes sense, right? And it's like when you get a melody, when you get a song stuck in your head, you just keep repeating it, right?
That's true.
And so that got me to understand, wait, what if we could do that but with good things, right? Like what if instead of turning on the radio and hearing rap about drugs and girls and partying and killing people, what if we could turn it on and be like, this guy's talking about truth, love, positivity, things that, you know, the right kinds of values in this world.
Sure.
And so that's what I'm doing. So like, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fantastic, man.
Thank you, man. And you know, what I was going to say is that, you know, just an example of what we're doing is the first song that I'm going to release is called Everything in the Mind. And I'm not going to, you know, go too much into it right now, but the chorus of the song is basically like saying, I'm feeling so blind in my life. I'm feeling so behind. And then the song shifts, and then it says, wait, but then I realized that everything in life, including the problems, all that stuff, is in the mind. And it's just like, the implications of this is like, what if somebody's just walking around in their daily life and some kind of problem, some kind of issue arises, and they're like, oh my God, you know, they get stressed out, they get frustrated, they're saying, oh my God, how could this person do this to me? Or whatever kind of freak out that person has. But then in the same way that somebody gets a melody stuck in their head, what if you be like, oh wait, but then I realize everything is in the mind. And just like that, this is the state of the mind, and you get back to what you're doing. And so, yeah, man, a lot of possibilities, a lot of implications. Super, super excited about it. But
awesome.
Thanks for asking.
So what do you want your legacy to be as life passes by? Where do you see yourself? What do you want your contribution to be?
Yeah, so I want to provide this world, a billion people in this world, access to the mental and emotional tools they need to figure out and sort out their own mental health, where it no longer becomes an issue or some kind of stress that they have on the back burner, but it is actually the mechanism that is leading them forward in many different areas of their life, whether it's relationships or whether it's business. And so I want to provide those tools, and I think that is going to unfold in so many different ways throughout my life. You know, I think I'm sort of doing it now a little bit with the podcast. But I think, you know, my VR company is going to step in and, you know, maybe make some solutions that weren't possible. I think my book is definitely going to help with that. I think the music that I make is definitely going to help with that. But I think when all is said and gone, and, you know, a billion people in this world know who I am. I mean, ideally 7 billion people. Not so much who I am, but just sort of using me as a reminder for themselves and their own story. I think that's what I want, man. And, I think with the technology that we have at scale, I think it's 100,000% possible for sure.
Awesome. That's great. Hey, Mark, this has been great. Thank you for spending the time with us. Thank you for unraveling your life and yourself. If I were to ask you for one takeaway for our listeners, what would it be?
How much time do we have?
No, I'm how much ever you need. I'm good with it.
Okay. So, you know, some people ask me a lot of times, like, you know, what got you on this journey? What got you on this transformation? There's so many different ways I could go with it. But honestly, at the end of the day, I've boiled it down to a few concepts that I feel like people could definitely benefit from. Number one is always seek the truth. The truth is the foundational bedrock of society. And what I mean by truth is this. Let's say you're going throughout your mind, your life, your day, and you get a thought in the back of your brain that says, hey Mark, you're an engineer, but you should be, I don't know, writing books, or whatever that is. And I'm just like, oh no, that's just a silly thought. And you shove that to the back of your mind. That's what I call lying. And that is the straight up recipe for mental health disorders and living a horrible life. Mm-hmm. And so whether it's you're talking to yourself, whether it's you're talking to other people, the truth is the most important thing in my opinion. And if you can use that as just like a foundational layer, I think it will take you wherever you need to go. The second thing I'll say is you need to feel the pain of your life today and the pain of the future. And what I mean by that is I had to face the pain of what I wasn't doing and not trying to drown it out in substances, with food, with Netflix. That's what I was trying to do all my life. And I think if you can use that pain in a productive way, it will push you, it will propel you to the next level that you need to get to. But if you try to delay it and you try to cope with it in negative ways, it's just going to make it worse and worse and worse. The third thing I'd say is you have to gain energy. What I mean by this is, you and I can sit here and we can, you could say to somebody, hey, think positive, smile, be happy. That's not going to do anything. Those are just words that are coming out of your mouth. You can't, in my opinion, you can't logically think your brain into this new state of being. And so what I think the entire name of the game is you have to gain energy in your life for you to see yourself in different positions. And what I mean by that is like, it doesn't matter who you are. If you are the happiest person, if you have the most strongest mindset, but you're super tired because of whether it's the food that you're eating or the lack of sleep or the lack of movement or just the lack of connection with your body, you're not going to be able to be yourself. This is just straight up human physiology. And so if you can not only do activities that you feel gain energy, but literally upgrade your own physiology, like, speaking of, in the past we were talking about, my different health issues. If you can sort that out, honestly, through a healthy diet, sleeping well, exercising, finding some sort of stress relieving mechanism, whether that's meditation or going for a walk in a park, that is going to completely shift your state of being. Once you see your state of being shifted because you have more energy, you are going to be like, oh wait, what else can I do? Oh wait, what else can I hop into? And so those three, worshiping the truth almost, feeling the pain now and the pain of the future if you don't do what you actually want to do, and gaining energy, I think those three are like the most powerful things. If anybody could just actually go home and do those two and actually do that tough work. But I mean, not a lot of people do. Most people, they'll whip out a paper and a pen, and they'll write down, what have I been lying to myself about? What am I not truthful to myself about? They'll look at it for 5 minutes, they'll write one thing down, and they'll just walk away and forget about it or try to find something else to distract them. And it's like, if you can just sit down and do the hard work, you're going to go places, you know this, you're going to go places where people, the 99% can't go. And, at the end of the day, you're going to die either way. And so it's just like understanding that, I would rather take a shot, go towards that fear, even if it feels like I'm going to die, and just do it and hope for a better tomorrow. So that's it, man.
Awesome. Hey, Mark, I couldn't agree more. I think those are some profound thoughts, and absolutely, I totally believe in them, and I have actually experienced them too. So that's absolutely great. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for this interview. Thank you for opening yourself up and letting us learn more about it, and wishing you the very best in all of your endeavors. I look forward to hearing that music as soon as it is out.
I'll definitely let you know, man. You're a great host, by the way.
Thank you so much.
Hey everyone, I hope you liked that episode as much as I enjoyed doing it. I do want to leave you with a thought today. My book, My Inspiration, Quotes That Shape My Self-Improvement Journey, is available on Amazon. Please go ahead and check it out. This is a book of quotes that I have collected over the last 5 to 6 years through experiences that I have been through. This is the kind of a book where no matter what situation you're in, you could open up the book any page, any time, and you will find a quote that will try to answer the challenge that you're facing. Hope you like it. Do check it out. The book is called My Inspiration, Quotes That Shape My Self-Improvement Journey, and it's available on Amazon. Thank you very much. Until next time, see you later.